welcome.
Olá.
And you may begin.
I need to share my presentation. It's not allowed.
Experimenta agora.
Okay. Yes, it's okay now.
Dê-me só minuto.
Okay.
Só espera. Já pode.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I would like to begin by thanking the opportunity of this presentation and congratulate the organization of this Congress for the attention given to a subject that unfortunately remains so scarcely debated in Portugal. When King Joseph ascended to the throne in September 1750, at the end of a remarkable cycle of commissions, an aesthetic change was announced in Portugal. It is in this context that we can integrate Alessandro Giusti's work, Roman sculpture, trained with two of the most respected artists of his time, Sebastiano Conca and the sculptor Giovanni Battista Maini, who was also particularly close to the artistic commissions of Lisbon court. Arrived in Portugal during the reign of King John V, in a context marked by the arts support and particularly the commission of Italian works, his settlement, reception, and fast rise are part of this environment and of imported taste, favorable to the development of a successful career. His professional progress was not unconnected of his prompt integration into the circles of local influence, as evidenced in the first years of his presence in Lisbon by the contacts established with leading names from the court, such as Sebastião José de Carvalho e Melo and his wife, the Countess of Daun, the Viscount of Vila Nova de Cerveira, the Marquis of Marialva, the King's Secretary of State, Dom Luís da Cunha Manuel, or Estevão Pinto de Moraes, an employee of the royal court, but also his relationships, development in the artistic and cultural circles with figures such as João Pedro Ludovice, son of the royal architect and particularly well placed with the king, Antonio Pecorari, his father-in-law and famous Neapolitan musician of the Royal Chapel, Don Luca Giovanni, singing master of the Queen, the composer Giovanni Bracci, the performer Tommaso Guarducci, the royal painter Vieira Lusitano, or even the famous portraitist Abad Aparicio. Journey that culminated with the status of the most prestigious sculpture in Portugal, particularly supported by the monarch, the task of leading the monumental commission of the reliefs for the Basilica of Mafra will determine establishment at the beginning of the Josephine government. Following his own Roman experience, Giusti will be responsible for the development of a pioneering system of art education in Portugal. Implemented in a work context, the Mafra Sculpture School, directly subordinated to the needs of the Basilica's Sculpture Commission, opens an organized and regular learning process, a fundamental role in the structuring of further establishments. Ensuring the essential aspects of the training cycle from the conception to the production works, it is clear the implementation of a methodological system marked by the orientations of an academic education, recruiting numerous trainees over more than 70 years, the fulfillment of the three fundamental stages of the pedagogical and creative process, drawing, modeling, and sculpting, is evidenced by the survival of some educational materials belonging to the school established in Mafra. In this context, I highlight in this presentation a set of draws and models which are essential to the training of different students, with particular focus on the collection of plaster replicas, today spread over different locations. Unique testimonies of a pioneer practice in Portugal, they were essential in the training process of several apprentices and also for a clear understanding of the learning methodology applied by Giusti. Raising the art of drawing to a primary curricular status, the Mafra Sculpture School performs a role of great relevance in this context, providing a more academic approach to the study of originals by copying classical works. In fact, the importance of classical masterpieces was recognized, as sculptor Francisco de Assis Rodrigues tells us, to acquire a correct and elegant style of drawing, copying models from the best-known authors until the knowledge of modeling is acquired. Models that often, usually the first and only way of contact of many artists with classical antiquity, including replicas of Greek originals and some reproductions of Roman sculpture. Collection already mentioned by António Ribeiro dos Santos at the end of the 18th century, the author listed some figures that we can still identify today, such as Venus of Medici, Hercules of Farnesio, Glaucon, Apollo of Belvedere, among others. In Mafra, it is still possible to recognize various gods from classical mythology, portraits of Roman emperors, and replicas of works such as Glaucon or Masius. Apart from these works, the collection also included several copies of 16th and 17th century sculpture, and it is also possible to identify reproductions of works by Michelangelo, Bartolomeo Amanati, or Alessandro Algardi. Among the 18th century works, I especially highlight the replicas of some apostles from the St. John Lateran Basilica, executed by the most renowned sculptors active in Rome in the first decade of this period. Finally, I emphasize the survival of replicas of the missing gilded silver apostolate commissioned at the time of King John V for the Patriarchal Church in Lisbon, in particular, the sculptures of St. Peter, St. John, St. Thomas, and St. James, cast from models by Giovanni Battista Mani, works that should correspond to the report of Ribeiro dos Santos at the end of the 18th century. The author precisely described the many apostles that were made from the originals in silver, which had come to the Patriarchal and which were lost in the earthquake of 1755. Made from the original pieces, their function as models for the practice of drawing is confirmed by the recent location of a remarkable set of 14 red chalk drawings. Numbered and dated, they were probably made by one of the 5 trainees of the second class of the school between 1764 and 1769. Complementing the visual information provided by the plaster casts, nowadays very damaged and incomplete, these drawings illustrate a great number of apostles, as well as their complete representations, and therefore assume increased relevance. Documented the different stages of the established education system, I finally mention an interesting set of busts preserved in the small church of Cudessal, a village near Mafra. Precise copies of these same replicas, they should be the practical result of the modeling exercise in the framework of the learning stages established by Giusti at the School of Sculpture. Reference works. It is interesting to note the use of these models by some Portuguese sculptors related to this training in Mafra, but also in the Roman context. Indeed, the parallels between these plaster casts and the apostles executed by Leandro Gagliardi for Cardinal Flavio Chigi should be emphasized. Exact reproductions of three of these models, they are especially relevant due to the relationship of this silversmith with Portugal at the service of the court, particularly in the chapel of Saint John the Baptist with his father Giuseppe Gagliardi. After the destruction of the patriarchal church of King John V, differently from what is usually assumed by accepting the disappearance of its entire works of art, part of the original commission would be recovered from the ruins, and other silver apostolates would be made in the second half of the 18th century. Since this is not the place to analyze the history and the destiny of these original pieces, I conclude by emphasizing the relevance of the plaster casts and drawings presented, which are unique visual records of a remarkable commission and thus one of the most outstanding survivals from the magnificent patriarchal church of King John V. Thank you very much.